CIOs would not be a piece of content in 2024 if we didn't talk about AI, right? Everybody's favorite hot topic. So 80% of our respondents said that they are being tasked with becoming more involved in AI in 2024. That's everything from researching AI even to actually already implementing and purchasing solutions. So I think CIOs are being tasked that from their leaders, like top down. And then they also seem that they have their line of business counterparts sort of like nudging them a little bit, like, can we get some of this stuff in? So they're feeling the pressure. And it's the vast majority of them, 80% again. And I'm gonna actually talk about quickly a different piece of research that we did because it's relevant. Last year, we performed our first AI priorities study. It was released in October 2023. It had a lot of great insights as well, but there were some in there that were like slightly controversial. One of the stats was that 1 in 4 IT leaders, so 25%, expressed concern or trepidation that their organization may be moving too rapidly in deploying this technology. And then only 36% thought that they had the right data infrastructure to enable AI effectively, make sure that this investment was a proper investment, right?
So you may have some CIOs saying, we've been using AI for years in our business, especially if there's, InsurTech, those types of things, right? But I think now what's happened is the democratization of, AI, generative AI has come to the forefront. And so you've got the CIO worrying about what their end customer's using. Like, what are they using? Are they using Copilot at work? Are they using, what are they using on a daily basis? Then you've got them looking at how they're going to evaluate what they need to do. Now, the same time around that report came out in 2023, I had just come back from a conference, the CIO Summit in 100 in the UK. I was hosting that and hosted a panel on this. And there were 2 CIOs in different sectors. One was from insurance technology. And, they just said, we're highly regulated. We're not going anywhere with it. Like, we've put the brakes on 100% until we can actually evaluate and figure out who's in market, what they have to offer. And going back to that other conversation we had, really let them understand our strategy so that they can help us along with planning and deciding and choosing where we need to go. So I'd say, that's where it is now. That's where it was then, excuse me. But now you get a lot of CIOs saying, we're building it out, we're testing it, but we're making sure we have really stringent parameters around it. We want to make sure that, nothing gets put into it that could be used for public. We've seen some stories around that has come out in the public that somebody from a certain company put in private data. It came out publicly. So you get them really understanding that they have to put some parameters around it. But I think it's kind of interesting to look at what people were saying in 2023 as to opposed to what they're saying now. So last year, I had a great conversation with Raji Subramanian. She's the CTO of Opendoor in the US. And, she just talked about that idea of focusing on strategy, roadmaps, but really reinventing business. And, it'd be really interesting, I think, to hear what she had to say back in October of 2023.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Last question here is really one that I'm asking everyone right now because it's so prevalent with all the CIOs and senior tech leaders I'm speaking to, and that's around Gen AI and LLMs, such a hot topic right now for many CIOs and senior tech leaders. And I was wondering how you're looking at Gen AI and LLM tools to enhance productivity in the organization. Are there any tips that you could provide to other CIOs looking at implementing ChatGPT or Bard or other AI or LLM tools?
It's an interesting, and yes, it is the hot topic of the day today, or rather in recent times. The interesting thing is, if you look at Opendoor's journey, Opendoor has been a pioneer of AI and ML since its inception. In fact, we've been using it, and there's a story behind it. We've been using it to really revolutionize the real estate industry. Specifically, we've used it extensively in terms of how you price homes. We're talking about a very bespoke sort of a product here. It's a product that customers have personalized very deeply, and we've been able to use AI and ML to price homes nationwide, and that's remarkable. But the more remarkable piece of that story is the fact that Opendoor anchored on innovation as one of the key themes in terms of how you leverage and use AI and ML to transform and reinvent, in this particular case, a very traditional industry. So now going back to the question that you'd asked, so how can companies look at it? And I say that companies typically operate along 3 different sort of journeys in their business. I call it the invent, implement, and optimize piece of it. Invent is where you're using highly inventive techniques to try out new ideas, to experiment new value propositions and go after it. Once you find product market fit, you scale and you build the foundations and you implement the production lines. And then as your business reaches a certain level of maturity, you optimize. My guidance to leaders is that AI is a new technology that has come in, which is going to create a step function change and disrupt every industry. And my guidance to them is you'll find that it's easy to get complacent and very conveniently get settled into the implement and the optimize zones. This is the time to reset. The same way that the internet came and changed, how everything is done, Gen AI is going to come and change everything that it's done. So it's time to go back and rethink the vision. It's time to rethink the strategy and the roadmap. It's not an incremental reset, it's a fundamental reset. So on the one hand, I feel companies need to reimagine how they're going to go and do things, whether it's transforming the customer experience, how do you actually deliver, work on productivity, and how you become operationally excellent and also disrupt your industry. I would look at it along all three pillars: productivity and excellence, transform the customer experience, disrupt real estate, then how you're going to go back to the drawing board to start reinventing again.
That was great. She's got such enthusiasm about it. She's definitely, I think, what we would call a bloomer. Raji's a bloomer. By the way, our chief marketing officer just came out with this blog that apparently people are either bloomers or gloomers with AI. Gloomers being the sort of gloom and doom. AI is going to be the end of us. But I love her enthusiasm, and I love how she calls it like this fundamental reset and this call for us to not be complacent. That said, are there fears that you're hearing, or are there concerns, any sort of apprehension from other CIOs?
Yeah, I mean, just as we mentioned earlier, I do see a lot of apprehensions and concerns around just the right pathway, really developing up that strategy, really getting into that cloud piece, the data piece, the cloud piece, having that sorted out first is almost seems to be fundamentally what they're saying to me. And then, again, talking to CIOs from around the world, you get someone. I just interviewed Graham O'Sullivan, who's the CIO of OneFamily in the UK. And, he really talks about the approach and really working with the vendors. And interestingly enough, he said, you can get a lot of companies approaching you on a consistent basis, but you really want to research who they are or get the information from an organization that can say to you, here are some of the major leaders in the market in Gen AI to help you figure out what your next road path would be. So maybe we can just tune in on this interview I had about 3 weeks ago.
Few levels in terms of enterprise adoption. So I think number one is safety, right? So we talk about a large language model generating new and original content. To put that in front of a customer and have them answer emails or have them answer even a phone call on an IVR, there's a lot of consideration around there, around appropriateness of the responses and the parameters and how that model is trained. I think the second one, and related to that, is data quality. So I think traditional AI, data quality has always been a challenge. I ran a data quality program for a large UK bank for 3 years where I had a very, very large amount of money, let's put it that way, but millions and millions of pounds just to solve data quality problems. And when I stepped away from that program, one of the last discussions I had with the business and with the finance function was, we've been doing this for 4 years as an investment program. The headline is data quality is not going away. There's going to be work every year. So let's make this BAU. Let's make this a continual discipline, which is what the organization did. If we look at large language models, if we look at Silicon Valley, they're all over data, knowledge graphs, ontology, data quality. We know in financial services and in a lot of verticals, organizations serving customers, we have a whole slew of data quality challenges and data challenges. So is there enough data to serve that outcome? Is the data quality up to scratch? Does it need to be augmented with synthetic data, things like that? I think there's a whole piece around data quality. The third one I would say, and final, is solutions. So if you go to a conference right now, every niche vendor seems to have LLMs cracked, right? They've done it.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah.
But obviously, when we look at the proprietary technologies in terms of OpenAI, it's not been out that long. So I think what we're seeing is there's a degree of rushing in to say we have something. But I think for organizations, my lesson from doing a bit of deep dive over the last couple of months is really about looking probably initially at the large enterprise players. So
Yeah.
the large enterprise players have done a lot of work. They've pre-trained models. They've pre-trained broader AI services as well as large language models, which are very, very easy to use in a cloud-based context. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot organizations are going to be able to do for themselves. I think it's really, really great that Microsoft have announced the removal of that floor, for example, on Copilot 365, that you don't have to have 300 licenses, because I think there was a risk that was playing into medium and large scale organizations only. And then the interesting piece, I think, for open source is probably 6-9 months behind in terms of catch up, but there's probably a play into open source in due course as well. But I think, I'd certainly encourage peers and other organizations to be eyes wide open. Someone comes and says, look at this thing we've done. What have they really built before they sell it to you at a premium? Or have they just wrapped one of those enterprise services with some branding and content? And actually now the hard work begins in terms of safety, data quality, and how you implement it in your environment.
Cautiously optimistic side. I think probably most people are optimistic about this, but what we're seeing is that there's really a lot of housekeeping that these IT leaders know needs to happen in terms of getting their data stored correctly, maybe organized correctly. That's a huge task, right? To make these tools work effectively.
It's huge. And, it's interesting, all this past year and the year before when I was interviewing, so many leaders were talking still about legacy systems. So dealing with legacy systems, trying to how to effectively move data into the cloud, looking at private versus public cloud, whether they're going to do it hybrid, have some data on-prem and some in the cloud. So there's still a lot of that discussion going on. And that's where so many are requiring that support from their vendors. But then, the new overlay on all of that is generative AI. And it's like, okay, now we really do need to have all of that in order or know what our strategy is and start putting that into place so that we can move to this next task, which is creating, better efficiencies, not only for their companies, but also for their customers, right? And having that leadership view, because they are getting asked by the CEOs and the board of directors, what are we doing in this space? So yeah, going back to our original discussion around the leadership aspect, it's certainly there. And, they've got a big job to do right now, I think, in 2024.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's great. Just what you're saying about the leadership aspect. I mean, this is an opportunity for, I would think, CIOs to say, hey, for us to be competitive, it's imminently important that we get our ducks in a row here. So yeah, just a great point.